Alrighty then, so here's what we took off on the bottom. You want to have 3 brackets and a cover and a buttload of bolts and washers, but you're going to need a 14mm and a 10mm to get all this off. So the first thing you're going to have to do is take this bracket off. This is from the bell housing to the exhaust, and there's 2 studs that go through on the bottom that they go through. So you want to take that off first because it's in front of the cover. And when you do this, go ahead and take the studs out, because you'll have to take it out to get the cover off anyway, because you can't move it enough because it hits the bell housing, not the bell housing, but it hits the oil pan on the engine. But one of them come out by hand, the other one I had to double nut to get it out. And then on that bracket, this is the bolt that goes through the exhaust onto that. Then once you get that out, you can take this bracket off, because this is on the front side next to the radiator part, and there's 3 14s and 2 10s. As you can see, 2 of the 14s go in on the engine, and then 1 go in through the transmission bell housing, and then the 2 10s bolt into the bell housing as well. Then on the back side, you're going to have 4 14mm, but one of them goes through the stud. The other one is another bell housing bolt, and then these 2 right here, they go into the engine behind the axle. It's a little tight, but you can do it without pulling the axle out first, but you got to pull the axle out anyway, so you can do whichever order you want to, but I always save the axles for last. That's just how I do it. And here's the nuts. Like I said, they're all 14mm. Then you got a buttload of washers that go around all that. Then you can set that to the side, and you should be able to pull your cover off. It should pretty much fall down once you get to that point. And then you can get to the torque converter bolts on the front, and they are 14 as well, and they're real shallow bolts. Mine were pretty tight. I'd say they were probably 40 foot-pounds or so, 40, 50 foot-pounds. So they had a decent amount of torque on them. And now we're at the portion where all we got to do is just take the axles out and pretty much take the mounts off, or disconnect the mounts, and she should be ready to come out. But I'm going to get it jacked up, get the tire off, and it's going to be the same pretty much procedure for driver and passenger side when taking the axle out. But I'm going to get it jacked up with a jack stand underneath there before I show y'all how to pull it out, just so we're safe. But once I get it jacked up and secure, we'll take the tire off, and then I'll show you how to take the axle out of it. So we get the tire off. Try to save this cotter pin. Oh, see, it does look like it's in really good shape. See if we can get it out. There we go. Take that off, and I'm guessing that is a 36. It does have a rubber washer spacer behind it. Let me grab my 36 and I'll be right back. Alright, gonna be some loud noises, so protect your ears. Look at that. Yeah, I can get this off. There we go. Okay, now we got that. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to break the tie rod loose on here, and then take these 2 spindle nuts right here off, or bolts and nuts. I'm going to take those off real quick, then we can tilt it forward a little bit, just enough, and swing it to the side that we can take the axle out. So let me go ahead and break all this loose, and I'll let you know what size they are after I pull them out. But there is a pin on this one as well. We'll see if we can get that one out without ruining it. And say, if not, I got some little ones. I just don't have any more big ones. Yeah, I'm going to have to break it, so it'll be alright. but it looked like they were probably 17s or 19s. But let me go ahead and pull all this out and tilt it back, and then once I get ready to pull it out, I'll show that to you as I'm doing that. Alright, so my battery died on me while I was filming pulling it out, and I didn't get a chance to show it. Sorry about that. But what I did was I got a small pry bar. If I can find it, I laid it down. There it goes. So got a small pry bar, put it up in between the control arm and the transmission, and then pried towards the opposite side, and it popped it right out. Here is the knuckle. Like I said, I just took off the tie rod end, the outer, and these two bolts. The nut for the tie rod end was a 19. That's it right there. Go ahead and throw it back on for a minute. And then the two bolts that were through here, through the knuckle, they were 17s. The head and the nut of the bolts, they both were 17. So I pulled those out, pulled it back, and then this one had a zip tie around the actual brake line piece, but yours should have like a little C-clip like what I took off of the shifter cable. Pull that off and move that out of the way, and you can flip it to the front of the car and turn it as far as you can that way, and it should clear it pretty well. Like I said, it's that last little 1/8 of an inch can catch on the lip right here, right there. But if you just kind of push back on the axle a little bit and pull it out, you should pop right out. Like I said, this is going to be the same for both sides. Here is the axle. You just having to overcome the tension of that little circlip right there. But I'm going to go put this back on so I can actually set the car back down and put the tire back on. But I'm going to put all this back together. I'm not going to tighten it up to like torque specs or anything, just enough to hold the car. But then I'm going to go over to the passenger side and do the exact same thing. And after that, all I got to do is just do the transmission mounts, which there's one right here, and there's one, I think, right in here somewhere. It may be on top, I can't remember. But I know there's this one right here, and then there's one more, and then we can actually start lowering the transmission down and start pulling it out. But let me go ahead and get it to that point, and then once I get through, I'll come back and we'll show us pulling it out. So one thing I did fail to mention before I pulled the axle out and all that was on the passenger side, you do have this bearing right here. It's got three 12 millimeters on there. They are a little tight to get to, so I think it recommends pulling the cross member down for the houses the motor mounts on it to get to them. But if you have a flex head like 1/4 inch ratchet, you can get in there and get them. Or if you have a flex head ratchet wrench, you could probably get in there as well. But I just used my little short flex head 1/4 inch ratchet and got in there pretty easy actually. The hardest one is the top one against the engine. It's just a little tight to get in there due to the exhaust being in the way, but if you can fit your hand around it, it's not too big of a problem. And then I did have to take the splash shield out on the passenger side as well. But we have the axle out now, and the only thing we really have to do from here is take the transmission mounts off and let it tilt and come out. But I do have to run an errand real quick, and I'm going to let them know about this axle because this one right here is torn a little bit and it's throwing grease everywhere. So I'm going to let the customer know about this and see if he wants to go ahead and replace it or not while I already have it out, because it will eliminate possible axle failure in the future. But I'll let him make that decision if he wants to do that or not. But once I get ready to pull it out, I will bring y'all back. Alrighty then, so we got the transmission out, as you can see. I did have to take a few other little things off just because I was afraid they were going to hit. The main thing was I was afraid it was going to hit that control arm mounting location and bolt right there. But there's a transmission mount right here. It's held on with 4 17 millimeters, then the actual through bolt is a 14 millimeter. You'll need a ratchet and a wrench to take that off. Then here's the transmission. This mount right here uses a 14 as well. And this is that mount I show you on transmission. This one goes to that. This bolts to the body and this location like that. Took it out, just make sure it didn't hang up in the mount. Then there's this bracket right here, and it goes just like that. I took it off so I have a little bit more clearance, and then I took off the actual body mount and the transmission mount that it goes into. Both of these, or this right here, has 2 nuts that are 14s, and like I said, you have the 14 millimeter bolt and nut combination that goes through it. And here are the 4 locations for the 17s, 2 on each lower, 2 on the uppers. And then once I got rid of all that, it come down fairly easy and slid right out. There wasn't any major issues that I encountered. I did take the torque converter out just because I wanted to see up in here, but whenever it was in, I was turning it, and you can see it looked like it was getting pretty hot right here. But as I was turning the torque converter, you could hear the pump in there scraping. I mean, it's just kind of grinding and stuff, so I'm guessing that the pump gears are pretty wore out in there, and this probably would need a new pump. And I don't know if this one, the pump is actually part of the case as well, but I have to look that up. But he did get a new torque converter anyway. I'll show that to you. This is it. Has no fluid in it. I do have to fill it up. Part number, I believe this is it. And DA11HD. That is a Recon torque converter. TransStar seal of quality. Trying to see if there's any other lettering on it. Only thing, yep, I don't see anything else, but we will fill that up for him. I do not know how much fluid that's going to take. I'm thinking somewhere around 10 to 12. I have to look it up, and I do believe it is Dexron 4 on this. I'll look that up, and I'll put a link to the fluid and try to see if I can find one for a torque converter on Amazon for everybody. But this is pretty much going to do it for this video. I will do another video if I run into any problems putting it in, but I'll put like torque specs for the axles and little stuff like that I know you need to torque, so everybody have that. But like I said, this is going to do it for this video. If y'all enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And until next time, y'all have a great day. Alright, so this is pretty much going to be bonus footage for everybody, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show y'all the torque specs for the axle nut and a way to do it, because these cars do tend to roll a good bit. But I'm going to torque the torque the lug nuts first. They torque between 78 and 88 foot-pounds, and I have it set on 90 actually, just because this seem to be a little bit older lug nuts. So 90 will not hurt anything. I'm gonna go back over them for a good measure. Alright, we have that. Now we're going to actually torque the axle nut. And this really surprised me. This axle nut actually torques from 174 up to 218 is what torque spec said. So I'm going to be torquing it at 175. Like I said, we have it on, I don't know how good you can see that, 175. And normally it does go over a little bit, so we got it to 176. Now I'll put my little washer back on. I know you don't have to, but I am. And then we can put our pin back in. See if I can find something to tap it with. I ain't got my hammer on me. Get down in there. Let me go grab a hammer. There we go. That's torquing the axle nut down and everything. Also, I know this was a two-part video. I didn't intend on it to be a two-part video, but it ended up being that way because it was going to be about 40 minutes long. And another thing I wanted to show y'all, whenever I put this in, this bracket right here, I did take it out as I'm putting it in because the pan kept on wanting to hit this whenever, because the engine had to be tilted and stuff. So to get it up at the right angle, it kept on wanting to hit this a little bit due to the edge right there, like on that section right there.